My name is Ben Carter, and I spent my 37th birthday alone in a booth at a 24-hour diner off I-95, eating pie that tasted like regret. My startup, an eco-friendly delivery app called Green Route, had just cratered after 3 years of 80-hour weeks. My girlfriend, Sarah, had moved out a month prior, taking her succulents and the good set of knives. I was living in my brother's borrowed studio apartment, which smelled faintly of cat and lost potential. My entire life savings was a number so small it could fit on a sticky note. The call from the lawyer came at 11:17 p.m. A Mr. Alastair Finch, of Finch, Sterling and Low. My great-uncle, Arthur C. Vance, a man I'd met exactly once at a terrifyingly quiet family funeral when I was 12, had passed away. I was named in the will. I expected a trinket, a dusty book, maybe a stern, framed photograph. What I got was an envelope. Inside, a single, crisply folded sheet of expensive, cream-colored paper. At the top, typed in a classic font, it read, "For Benjamin Carter. A man is defined not by his wishes, but by what he builds. Complete the list. Inherit the means." Beneath it were 10 items. Not tasks, but creations. A table that mends what is broken. A bridge between two silences. A key that opens a door which does not exist. A meal that answers a question never asked. A map to a place you have always known. A clock that tells the right kind of time. A story that belongs to someone else. A container for unspoken words. A light that reveals by hiding. The first step of a journey you will not finish. And at the very bottom, in handwritten, spidery ink, start at the workshop. You have 1 year. Fail, and it all vanishes. Sincerely, your Uncle Arthur. A second sheet listed an address in a town called Havens End, Maine, and the coordinates for a safety deposit box at a bank in Portland. I laughed. It was the laugh of a drowning man offered a philosophical treatise on water. This was the inheritance of a profoundly eccentric, probably senile old man. A poetic scavenger hunt leading to nothing, but then I saw the bank statements paper-clipped behind the list. Monthly deposits into an account in my name from a trust. $10,000 every month for 1 year. For materials and living expenses, a note said, "The capital is not the price. It is the fuel. $120,000. No strings, except 10 impossible, maddening strings." I sat in that diner booth until dawn, the list glowing under the cheap fluorescent light. It felt less like an inheritance and more like a door knocking from the other side. I had nothing to lose. I had already lost it all. I drove north for 2 days to Havens and was not on most maps. It was a fistful of clapboard houses clinging to granite cliffs at the edge of the Atlantic, smelling of salt, pine, and forgotten things. The townspeople, fishermen, a few artists, weathered retirees, watched me with the cautious curiosity reserved for strays and tax assessors. The workshop was not a shed. It was a cathedral of making. Uncle Arthur's life's work. A vast, timber-framed barn behind a modest, shingled cottage. One wall was all windows facing the violent, beautiful sea. Inside, it was organized chaos. A master carpenter's bench sat beside a gleaming metal lathe. Shelves held jars of exotic woods, sheets of copper and brass, bins of lenses and gears and sea glass. There was a forge, a pottery wheel, a drafting table covered in intricate sketches. It was the physical manifestation of a mind that asked how and why about everything. In the center of the main work table, under a glass dome, was a single, perfect, dovetailed wooden box, empty. A note beside it, "For the first thing you finish." The safety deposit box in Portland held no money. It held 10 smaller boxes, each labeled with a number, 1 through 10. Inside box number 1 was a single, ancient, hand-forged iron nail and a faded photograph of a young woman sitting at a kitchen table, her head in her hands, a shattered vase on the floor before her. On the back, in script, "Eleanor, 1946. Not everything that breaks is ruined." This was the clue, not an instruction, but a provocation. I spent a week just cleaning, touching tools, feeling like an imposter. The first $10,000 hit my account. The pressure was a physical weight. A table that mends what is broken. 25:01, 40:00. The first 3 items didn't build a table. I repaired one. I found it in the town dump. A pathetic, mid-century Formica thing. One leg snapped, veneer peeling. The townsfolk thought I was insane. Especially Maya, who ran the general store with the weary grace of a retired sea captain. She was in her 60s, with eyes that had seen storms. "Arthur's nephew," she said, not as a question. "He said you'd come. Said you'd either fix something or set it on fire." She became my reluctant guide, my supplier of coffee, sardonic commentary, and occasional wisdom. The table wasn't about making it look new. The clue was in the nail and the photo. It was about honoring the break. I used the ancient nail to pin the leg, but I inlaid the crack with gold epoxy, the Japanese art of kintsugi. I repaired the veneer, but left the scars visible. When I finished, it was more beautiful, more storied than it had ever been. I placed it in the glass dome box. Nothing happened, but I felt a shift. I had listened and responded. The list wasn't literal. It was metaphysical. Item number 2, a bridge between 2 silences. The clue was 2 contrasting stones, one volcanic basalt, one smooth river granite, and a photo of 2 old men sitting on separate park benches, not looking at each other. I thought of my brother and me, our communication reduced to texts about rent. I built a tiny, intricate footbridge model, maybe 18 inches long. But the bridge was the act of delivering it to old Mr. Higgins and Mr. Arroyo, 2 neighbors who'd feuded for a decade over a property line. I told them my crazy inheritance story, showed them the bridge. "My uncle thought you 2 should have this." I left it on the contested strip of land. A week later, they were seen talking. The bridge wasn't the model. It was the absurd, vulnerable act of offering it. Item number 3, a key that opens a door which does not exist. The clue was a blank brass key, blank, and a photo of a child's face pressed against a window, looking in. This broke me for weeks. Then, in the workshop, I found Arthur's journals. Rambling musings on memory, regret, doors in the mind we lock and lose the keys to. I made a key, but I also wrote a letter to my father, who I hadn't spoken to in 5 years, a door I'd sealed shut. The letter wasn't an apology or a demand. It was just news about the weather, the workshop, the strange list. I sent the key with it. The key didn't open his door. It opened mine. The act of sending it was the unlocking. The work was consuming me, but not in the draining way the startup had. This was a flow. I was learning to interpret, not just do. Item number 4, a meal that answers a question never asked. The clue was a single saffron thread and a photo of a crowded, silent dinner table. I'm a terrible cook. I invited Maya, Mr. Higgins, Mr. Arroyo, and a reclusive artist named Elias for dinner. I burned the roast. The vegetables were soggy, but I served it on the table I'd mended. I told them about item number 4. We ate terrible food and talked, really talked, for the first time. The question never asked was, are we alone? The meal, the shared failure and laughter, answered, no. Item number 5, a map to a place you have always known. The clue was a compass with no needle and a photo of Arthur as a young man, staring at the sea. I built a beautiful, nautical-style map frame. But the map inside was a sonogram printout I found in an old book, my own, from 1985. The first place I ever knew. The place I had always known was my own body, my own existence. It was a map to my origin. Item number 6, a clock that tells the right kind of time. The clue was a set of unmoving clock hands and a photo of a sundial at midnight. I built a clock that didn't show hours or minutes. Instead, a single, slow-moving hand pointed to words around the dial. Enough, rest, now, breathe, remember, enough again. It told emotional time, not chronological time. Maya saw it and said softly, "He always said modern clocks just tell you how late you are for your own life." I was changing. The desperate, frantic energy of my old life was calming into a patient rhythm. The people of Haven's Inn were no longer curiosities. They were becoming my community. Sarah called. She'd heard wild rumors. I was in Maine building philosophical art. She was checking in. The sound of her voice, once my whole world, now felt like a station tuned to static. I wished her well. I felt nothing but a mild, distant fondness. With 4 months left, the pressure returned. The final items were harder, more personal. Item number 7, a story that belongs to someone else. The clue was a blank leather-bound book and a photo of Maya as a young woman, standing on the prow of a fishing boat. I had to earn this. I spent days at the store, not asking, just helping. Finally, one evening over whiskey, she told me about her husband, lost at sea 30 years ago. The story wasn't about the tragedy, but about the love that preceded it. The stupid, joyful, everyday love. I didn't write it down. I built a small, beautiful ship in a bottle, but inside was a tiny, perfect replica of their kitchen table, with 2 microscopic cups of coffee. It was her story, told in my language. When I gave it to her, she cried. Then she smiled. Arthur would have liked that. Item number 8, a container for unspoken words. The clue was a sealed, empty glass bottle and a photo of my own mother, looking young and anxious. This was the hardest. The unspoken words between us were all about my father, her long-ago divorce, the quiet disappointment she carried. I didn't make a container to hold those words. I built a beautiful hollow chair. The seat could be lifted. I sat with her on a video call and finally asked the questions I'd never asked. I didn't put the answers in the chair. The chair itself was the container, a sacred space created to finally speak and hear. We talked for 4 hours. I filled the chair with the peace that followed. Item number 9, a light that reveals by hiding. The clue was a blackened lantern globe and a photo of the workshop at night, one lamp on. I built a lamp with a shade made of hundreds of layered, laser-cut steel leaves. When off, it was a solid, dark orb. When on, light escaped only through 10,000 tiny pinpricks, casting a breathtaking constellation of shadows and light spots on the walls and ceiling. The light hid its source, but revealed a hidden universe in an ordinary room. It was a metaphor for understanding. Sometimes you see the truth only by looking at what surrounds it, not at the thing itself. The final clue box, number 10, contained only a small, smooth stone from the beach below the workshop and a fresh, blank piece of paper. Item number 10, the first step of a journey you will not finish. I stared at it for days. The deadline loomed. I had built 9 profound, puzzling things. I had repaired relationships, forged new ones, discovered a craftsmanship in myself I never knew existed. But this, what was the step? On the final night, with 12 hours to go, I sat in the workshop surrounded by my creations, each now in its own protective case. I was out of ideas. I had failed. Then I looked at the blank paper. I thought of Arthur, spending a lifetime in this room, making beautiful, useless, profound things. I thought of the list not as a test, but as a curriculum. I picked up the smooth stone. I walked out of the workshop, down the path to the cliff's edge. The Atlantic roared below. I drew back my arm and threw the stone as far as I could into the churning, moonlit water. That was it. The first step of a journey I would not finish. The journey of that stone. It was now on a path through tides and currents, over ocean floors, perhaps into the belly of a fish, onto a distant shore in decades. Its journey was begun, and I would never know its end. My act was the initial, catalytic step. I had completed the list. I walked back to the workshop, empty-handed. As I entered, the single electric bulb over the main work table flickered and brightened. With a soft, mechanical click, the central work table itself slid aside, revealing a hidden staircase leading down. The room below was not filled with gold or stock certificates. It was another workshop, but smaller, more intimate. On a central pedestal sat a final letter and a simple, framed photograph of Arthur, smiling warmly at the camera, not the stern man I remembered. Benjamin, if you are reading this, you did not seek a prize. You engaged in the process. You learned the language. The 10 items were not tasks. They were lenses through which to see a life well lived. Repair, connect, unlock, nourish, remember, be present, listen, speak, understand, begin. The $120,000 was the bait. The lessons were the interest. This house, the workshop, and the trust that maintains it in perpetuity, these are now yours. Not to sell, but to use, to live in, to create in, to welcome others who need to learn how to see. You are not rich. You are equipped. Build a life, not a fortune. It was a pleasure to be your uncle, even from afar, Arthur. Next to the letter was a deed and a set of keys that I walked back upstairs as dawn broke. Maya was waiting outside with 2 mugs of coffee. She looked at my face, saw the peace, not the triumph. He gave it to you, she stated. He did. Good. He was a terrible cook, but a good judge of character. She handed me a mug. The bridge guys want to know if you'll help them build a real shed. They're arguing about the plans already. I smiled, looking out at the sea, thinking of the stone traveling its unknown path. I had come here with nothing, to claim an inheritance. I was leaving with everything, having built it myself, piece by piece, from the inside out.